welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the tech that really powers the modern company. We're talking about the systems that act like its brain and its entire nervous system.
So let's kick things off with a big question. What system or, what set of systems truly acts as the central nervous system for a whole organization? The thing that senses what's going on and lets the business react in real time.
Here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get into the core components, the digital nervous system itself. Then we'll see how these systems serve different people in the company. After that, we'll look at the huge challenge of getting everything connected, how it all powers business online, and finally, we'll get into the really crucial human side of all this. Okay, let's dive right in by figuring out what we even mean when we say an information system. It sounds kind of technical and abstract, but it's something you and I interact with pretty much every single day. See, at its heart, it's a bunch of parts all working together, but it's so much more than just the computers on our desks. Yeah, you've got the hardware and software, of course, but you also have the networks connecting everything, the data flowing through it, and this is the most important part, the people who build, manage, and actually use these systems to make decisions.
Now, this is a really, really important distinction. We throw the words data and information around like they're the same thing, but they are totally different. Data is just the raw, unprocessed facts, numbers in a spreadsheet. They don't mean anything on their own. Information, that's what you get when you give that data some context, when you organize it and turn it into something useful. It's the difference between a random list of numbers and a report that clearly shows you, hey, our sales are trending up.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually play out in a real company? Well, turning all that data into the right kind of information really depends on who you are. Different people need completely different things to get their jobs done. Think about it. The CEO isn't worried about whether to restock a specific item on a shelf. That's a structured, almost automatic decision for someone on the operational staff. The executives at the top, they're wrestling with the big, messy, unstructured problems with no clear answers, like, should we launch in Europe? And middle managers, they live somewhere in between, trying to answer those semi-structured questions that need a mix of hard data and good old-fashioned judgment. So let's start at the ground level. Here you've got transaction processing systems, or TPS. These are the absolute workhorses of the company. They capture every single routine thing that happens, every sale that's made, every paycheck that's cut, every hotel room that's booked. This is where all the raw data comes from. Okay, so we've got all this raw data from the TPS. Now what? Well, you move one level up to Management Information Systems, or MIS. These systems grab all that detailed data and summarize it. They'll turn thousands of individual sales into one clean weekly sales report. This gives managers a clear picture of what's going on without totally drowning them in the details. And then you get to the top floor. This is where you find Executive Support Systems, or ESS. These are designed for the C-suite. They don't just summarize what's happening inside the company, they pull in data from the outside world too, like stock prices, news headlines, and competitor actions. They present it all in a high-level dashboard with lots of graphs and charts, so leaders can explore those big what-if questions and make strategic calls. So you've got a system for sales, another for finance, another for manufacturing. But there's a huge problem, right? They don't talk to each other. They create these information silos. So the really big question for businesses became, how on earth do you get them all to work together? And that brings us to this idea called Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP. The dream of ERP is to have one single central system for the entire company. Sounds great, right? But trying to actually implement one has been called corporate brain surgery. And for a very good reason. It's an incredibly complex, high-stakes operation that literally touches every single part of the business. And you can see why it's so risky. I mean, we're not just talking about installing some new software here. This is about completely redesigning how people do their jobs, day in and day out. The costs are massive. Moving all your old data over is a total nightmare. And if you underestimate how much people will resist the change, well, the whole thing can just crash and burn. Now, these systems don't just work inside the company. They have to manage the whole supply chain. And this is where you can see something wild called the bullwhip effect. It's where a tiny little change in what customers are buying gets amplified into these huge chaotic swings in orders as you go further up the chain, all because people aren't sharing information properly. Then, on the other side of the coin, you have customer relationship management, or CRM. This is all about managing every single interaction your company has with a customer. There's the operational part for your frontline sales and service teams, the analytical part for digging through customer data to find patterns, and the collaborative part for working with partners to make the customer's experience better. All right, so we've talked about the inside of the business. Now let's look at how these systems plug the company into the rest of the world, specifically through the internet and the explosion of e-commerce. I mean, e-commerce just blew up back in the mid-90s, and it really hasn't stopped since. The biggest shift we're seeing right now, though, is the move to mobile. Doing business on our phones is growing so incredibly fast that it's on track to become the main way we all buy and sell stuff online. And this whole digital revolution has created all these new ways of doing business. You have your classic e-tailers like Amazon, of course, but you also have content providers, transaction bookers, market creators that bring buyers and sellers together, and even community providers. Each one has a totally different playbook for making money online. But, and this is a big but, connecting everything and everyone with all this tech isn't a simple, happy story. It brings up some really tough, critical questions about its impact on people, on our jobs, and on society itself. Think about this for a second. One of the biggest human challenges for any company is managing what its people actually know. And here's the kicker. A massive chunk of a company's knowledge isn't sitting in a neat, tidy database. Something like 80% of it is unstructured. It's buried in thousands of emails, Word docs, and PowerPoint presentations. That's a huge problem to solve. And a lot of that unstructured knowledge is also tacit. It's the stuff that's just in your head, it's your gut feeling, your experience, your skill. It's incredibly valuable, but also incredibly hard to share. So the entire goal of what we call knowledge management is to figure out how to pull that tacit knowledge out of people's heads and make it explicit, to get it written down so everyone can benefit from it. You know, when technology moves this fast, it often outpaces our laws and our sense of what's right. That's when you hit these ethical gray areas. There are no easy answers, but having a simple framework like this can really help. First, get your facts straight. Then, clearly define the problem. Figure out everyone who's affected. And finally, really think through your options and what might happen. And these ethical issues pop up everywhere, don't they? We're talking about really fundamental stuff, like our right to privacy, how to protect ideas in a digital world, and who's to blame when a complex system goes wrong. And it even gets into the quality of our lives, from the fear of jobs being automated away to the constant threat of cybercrime and security breaches. Which really leaves us with one final massive question to think about. As these information systems get even smarter, even more connected, and even more woven into the fabric of our lives, they're not just changing how we do business. They're forcing us to ask a much, much deeper question. What is our whole idea of work itself going to look like in the future?